Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to help you get up to speed on big ideas, fast, by pulling the most vital insights from a stack of sources.
And today we are tackling, well, a huge challenge.
A monumental one, really.
Yeah.
How do you lead when everything around you just feels volatile, uncertain, and, frankly, overwhelming?
It's the question of our time, isn't it? I mean, all those old strategies, the 5-year plans, the predictable growth models,
They just crumble.
they completely fall apart under pressure. And if you're in charge, you don't have the luxury of waiting it out. You have to, pilot the ship right through the storm.
And that is exactly our mission in this deep dive. We've been buried in Chris R. Velazquez's book, Leading Through the Storm, How Leaders Survive and Thrive in Chaos. Our goal is to pull out a real framework for what he calls crisis-proof leadership.
And what makes this book such a great source for this is its unique blend. It's not just your typical business case studies.
Right.
Velazquez, he actually weaves together modern organizational psychology and crisis management with some really deep biblical wisdom.
Specifically from the Apostle Paul, right?
Right.
His time in prison.
Exactly, from his letter to the Philippians. So you get this incredible mix of ancient resilience and modern science.
So what we're really unpacking for you today, the core idea, is that success in these chaotic times, it needs a totally new way of thinking about resilience.
Right. It's not just one thing. It's a blend. You've got to have that spiritual grounding, the emotional intelligence.
Adaptability, of course.
And this is crucial, it has to be centered on people,
Yeah.
human-centered decision-making.
Okay, so to get to that new model, we first have to kind of tear down the old one.
We do. We have to start with the myth of what the book calls the unbreakable leader.
I think we all know this person. The stoic leader,
Yeah.
the one who's always got the confident answer, never shows a crack.
Just grinds harder, speaks louder.
Yeah, to project that stability.
Yeah.
We're kind of conditioned to think that showing any vulnerability, especially in a crisis, is weakness.
But the book argues that that exact image, the granite statue of a leader, that's the one that shatters when the pressure really gets high.
So what's the alternative?
Well, the biblical model of strength that's explored here is about rootedness, not rigidity. These leaders, they were actually honest about being frail. They doubted, they faltered.
And they admitted it. Openly.
They did. I mean, the examples are all over the source material. You have Moses saying, I am not eloquent.
Okay.
Gideon basically says, my clan is the weakest. These aren't just like humble little statements. They're admissions of insufficiency.
And Paul, too, right?
Oh, yeah. The book points to Paul admitting he felt pressed beyond measure so that we despaired of life. I mean, that is a long way from the always-in-control CEO.
But that goes against so much modern leadership advice.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that you risk destabilizing your team if you show you're stressed. They're looking for a firm hand.
Right. And the book just flips that idea on its head. It says those admissions of frailty, they aren't failures of leadership. They are, and I'm quoting here, portals through which reliable external strength can enter.
So the vulnerability isn't the flaw you have to hide.
No.
It's the entry point for a stronger kind of strength.
Exactly. That's the critical distinction. Velazquez has a whole chapter called Resilience versus Rigidity. Rigidity is refusing to bend, which just guarantees you'll snap.
Whereas resilience is being willing to bend while staying anchored.
That's it. You've got it. And the ultimate model for this in the text is what it calls surrendered strength.
Okay, what's that?
It points to Jesus in Gethsemane. It's this posture of, deep distress. But the conclusion is, not my will, but yours be done. So the strength flows from reliance on something outside yourself, not just from your own grit.
And that's what holds you steady when things get disruptive.
That's what forges you.
Say.
The source is very clear that this kind of deep, resilient leadership is always shaped in disruption, not in comfort. The wilderness is the classroom.
Joseph in prison, David on the run.
Paul in Arabia, all of them. Storms don't just test your leadership, they reveal it. They show what the quiet seasons were hiding about your true foundation.
Okay, so if the wilderness is our curriculum, we need a toolkit, a practical framework to actually navigate it. What are these anchors of storm-tested leadership?
The book breaks it down into 4 critical anchors. The first, which is really the foundation for everything else, is spiritual grounding. He calls it the compass.
And I'm guessing this is less about a specific religion and more about having an internal guidance system that doesn't shift with the circumstances.
That's a perfect way to put it. Leaders without it are described as like captains just steering by instinct, or by whatever the latest market trend
Which
is.
is useless in a storm.
Instantly useless. This source really stresses that a leader's greatest resource in a crisis isn't their charisma or their genius. It's the consistent, stabilizing reality of God with them.
So how does that look on a practical level, like when you're facing a massive supply chain breakdown or a PR nightmare?
Operationally, that grounding gives you hope, and hope gives the team stability. When a leader has that inner anchor, that purpose that's bigger than the quarterly numbers, they can absorb all that volatility without just passing on the panic
It lets you move from just reacting to everything.
to making a considered response. It's a massive shift. It's Moses saying he won't lead without that companionship, or Jesus constantly stepping away to solitary places to, recalibrate.
And that inner stability must be what allows you to then engage with your team effectively.
It is. Which brings us right to the second anchor, emotional intelligence or the human heart.
We hear about EI all the time in the business world. Usually it's about like self-management, social awareness. How is this different?
The book frames it as a Christ-like discipline. It shifts the focus from seeing emotions as a liability you have to manage to valuing them as essential assets, especially in a crisis.
So standard corporate EI might teach you to suppress your stress to look professional.
Right. But this framework argues that in those chaotic moments, people don't need your answers first. They need your presence. They need validation.
So the leader's job is to hold space for the team's chaos, not just their own.
You have to. The source points to Jesus' model of emotional presence. He didn't just give instructions. He named and validated what people were feeling. He'd ask, "Why are you afraid?"
Acknowledging the fear, not just dismissing it.
Exactly. Or he'd admit, "My soul is troubled," which gives everyone else permission to be human. A leader's job is to guide people from that panic to perspective, and you do that with empathy, not reactivity.
So the leader's own vulnerability isn't just an entry point for strength, it's also a bridge to connect with a team that's scared.
Absolutely. If you ignore the emotional reality of a crisis, you're just asking for more chaos down the line.
Okay, that makes sense. Which leads to the third piece.
Yes. The third anchor is adaptability. This is the agile blueprint.
When you're in chaos, the old map is useless. You have to be able to pivot your strategy, but without losing your mission.
And this is where the book holds up Paul as a masterclass in leadership flexibility.
Yep.
His core mission never changed,
Right, sharing his faith.
never wavered. But his method, it changed constantly. I mean, the book points out how he'd be debating philosophy with scholars in Athens one day and then working as a tent maker the next to support himself, or, sharing his story with prison guards while he was in chains.
That's true agility. Not just small tweaks, but being ready to completely change your approach based on the environment.
It's captured in that quote the book uses from Paul. "I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some." Adaptability in this view is basically wise stewardship of your mission. Storms demand that you innovate.
They force you to challenge those old assumptions.
Yeah, they do. And you have to see creativity not as some optional extra, but as a core responsibility. Adaptive leaders don't fear the change. They actually harness it.
Okay, so we've got the inner stability of grounding, the empathy of emotional intelligence, and the flexibility of adaptability. What's the last anchor?
The fourth anchor is human-centered decision-making. Or, as the book puts it, being the shepherd, not the CEO.
So this is moving away from being purely driven by metrics.
And this can be the toughest one for organizations built on efficiency. Leadership, when a storm hits, has to be driven by compassion, not just outcomes. The shepherd model is the guide here. Leaving the 99 to find the one.
Feeding the hungry before you start preaching.
Prioritizing dignity over pure efficiency.
Okay, let's make that really practical. Say you're in a financial downturn. How do you prioritize dignity when the most efficient decision is probably a big layoff?
Well, the book argues that what looks efficient in the short term often destroys the loyalty and trust you need for the long term. And you need those more than anything in a crisis.
So what would it look like?
It might mean taking a specific short-term financial hit. Maybe you implement creative cost cutting, like shared salary reductions across the board, or you focus on retraining people instead of just cutting a whole department.
You're making decisions that serve the people, not just the budget line.
Yes, and that builds incredible loyalty, trust, a culture of safety. It ensures the team that makes it through the storm is psychologically whole, not just financially lean.
Which means they're actually capable of thriving afterward, not just surviving.
Exactly. It's balancing outcomes with well-being.
So let's connect these four anchors: grounding, emotional intelligence, adaptability, and human-centered decisions to what our listener can actually do. How do you move from burnout and survival to, clarity and confidence?
The book frames this transformation as a journey, kind of mirroring these powerful biblical stories, like Peter, who goes from brokenness and denial to being this foundational leader.
Or Joshua, moving from fear to faith.
Right. And the growth, it says, rarely starts from a place where you feel strong. It starts when you allow yourself to be vulnerable and reshape from the inside out.
And the sources also talk about the leader's own well-being, right? You
Yeah.
can't lead anyone through a storm if you're drowning yourself.
No, you can't. The emphasis is all on building resilient habits before the crisis. You can't wait until the storm hits to learn how to swim.
So that goes back to anchor one, regularly withdrawing to recalibrate.
It does, and it also means reframing challenges. Resilient leaders, they don't deny stress. They see it as an opportunity for refinement, for growth. And they build team cultures where it's okay, it's normal to ask for help.
What really stands out to me is how much of this is an actionable toolkit. It's not just big ideas. For the listener who wants concrete tools, what's in there?
The book is really designed to be both a strategic manual and a roadmap. It connects all this wisdom to direct application. So yeah, we're talking crisis response frameworks, but also things like emotional regulation practices, self-assessment tools, even 30-day resilience building plans.
So it's step-by-step guidance.
Very step-by-step. It's about turning these concepts into muscle memory before the next crisis comes.
And this all ties back to legacy, doesn't it?
It really does. Leaders who cultivate this whole package, the spiritual depth, the empathy, the agility, they create organizations that can actually withstand change for generations.
So legacy isn't measured by, your peak performance in one good quarter.
No, not at all. Legacy in this model is measured by the lives you transform, the hope you sustain, the courage that you multiply in other people. It's an influence that lasts.
That feels like a good place to land this deep dive. If we boil it all down, the core lesson seems to be that leading in chaos means you have to anchor yourself in a deep purpose and then prioritize your people over just clinging to performance metrics.
You don't need to be unbreakable. You just need to be anchored. You don't need to control the storm. You need wisdom, trust, and a willingness to rely on a deeper strength.
So the pressure, the weariness, it's not a sign you're failing.
No, it's an invitation. An invitation to a deeper kind of faith and a much more effective kind of leadership. The struggle isn't something to just get through. It's what develops the capacity you need.
And that leads us to the final thought we want to leave you with, which really builds on everything we've talked about.
Success is not defined by what you escape, but by who you become while you're walking through the storm. Because, as the source material concludes, storms do not destroy God-shaped leaders, storms reveal them.